Good morning, Adam. Good evening, USA.
Good morning, good evening.
Hello.
How
How
are we,
doing?
gentlemen?
I'm doing great.
So we have Glassy today. I'm very happy actually that he was able to join. How are you, my man?
I am doing all right. Trying to just get everything set up. I finally got my computer that I built like 8 months ago set up over here.
Oh,
But
yes. So first time
trying
in use.
to-
Good. And now it's already old. What are you getting? 5090?
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Okay, cool. So, main topic is 5090 today, but we can, as always, ask questions in the chat, and we take it from there. Okay. Who wanna start? Who likes to start?
Yeah, I want to say I'm gonna get the 5090 if I can. Day one.
Tell us your
I
story. What are you
visit-
going to do?
I visit Best Buy and Micro Center to ask them. Best Buy doesn't know anything. But the manager told me you can come like 2 or 3 days before the release, and if I have them like physically, I can tell you yes, we will have some at release. Micro Center will have GPUs, but they will not have the Founders Edition. They will have the rest of the cards. And 1 hour before the store opens, they will give a ticket that guarantees you can buy a GPU, but it doesn't guarantee you any specific model. And they don't recommend you to sleep overnight, but that's what I'm gonna do because, of course,
Are you
I'm
serious?
gonna go to I'm gonna go to
Wow.
Micro
It
Center.
won't help you. Do you have Discord?
If I have Discord,
Yeah. Do you have a Discord? I can send you an invite to
No.
the Micro Center Discord group, and that's where you're gonna find the best information about how to get a card.
oh, okay. I don't have a Discord, but I can create one. So what would you recommend? What's your experience?
There is literally a guide on their Discord about what each store is going to do, so you can actually find the Discord for the group for the store that's near you, and you'll have like instructions on how they are going to do it. So it'll tell you like if you need to be sitting in your car at 9 a.m. or something, it'll tell you that.
Oh, really?
Can I just jump in and say, with the price of this card, I am blown away the fact that people are saying,
I
like
was
yourself,
going
Ariel,
to say the same.
I'm going to sleep over, I'm going to do all this stuff. Like, is there really that much demand for a card this expensive?
It is. That's
Because
the
of
problem.
the video RAM. Because Quadros are so expensive for professionals. That's what happened with the 4090. That's why the 4090 didn't matter what they priced it at. I remember gamers were crying that it was launched at what, 1600 or something. But it eventually peaked over 2000 at retail because of the professionals needed the video RAM.
Yeah.
Yeah, and,
So
and
that's
I
why
do,
that's why Nvidia can do whatever they want to do.
Mhm.
It's like
and I
crazy.
would do it for the adventure. I've never done that before. I think it's funny. You sleep overnight, and if
You never experienced PlayStation 1 launch or PlayStation 2 launch. So
No.
PlayStation 1 not that much because I just bought it actually a couple of weeks later. But PlayStation 2, I was in the store, waiting in the front of the store 5 hours before they opened. And my mom was like, I don't know how old I was, but it was a great experience because hundreds of people actually there.
I mean, that's super cool. I come from Cuba. We don't do that kind of stuff. I mean, there's nothing released in Cuba. So yeah, that would be so cool. Also, I would do like a live stream and see if people there are cool, and I would interview them. Hey, what's your PC? What do you want? The 5090? What are you gonna buy? Play around with that. So yeah.
If you guys don't mind indulging me, so I obviously am coming from an ex-PC player's perspective now, been on console for the last 8 to 10 years, and just being around you guys, I've kind of started looking down this path, and now I am seriously considering buying a PC. So please forgive me if I ask any dumb questions or if I seem like I don't know what I'm talking about. I am still trying to learn from you guys. But my question leads me to my question. What is like the nearest competitor to this card? Like I'm assuming it's ATI, right? Is that what it is? Or who is the not ATI?
AMD.
AMD, sorry. So what is their nearest competitive card? Do they have anything comparable to this graphics card, or is this just standing as an outlier? There's nothing that comes close to this.
Yeah, it's a real Halo product, and AMD is stepping away from the higher tier cards like that.
Right. So this is just a step apart. This is the card to get.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, I said it in many videos. If I would just game on my PC, purely gaming, I would get an AMD graphic card because they're just better in price value. You know, they're just better. But with all the other things considering, you know, what Nvidia is doing with not just so for encoding and stuff like that, for video editing, it's just a much better hardware. There's no doubt about that. That's the thing. But that's what Nvidia knows, and that's why because there's no competition, you know, in the price in the reach. So I wouldn't say a competition because 4080 and the AMD 7900 XTX is very close. So in some games, the 7900 XTX is even coming very close to the 4090 for half the price, for even more than half the price. But when we're now talking ray tracing, path tracing, DLSS, then Nvidia is so far ahead. It's not funny anymore. So that's why AMD says no.
There's also other issues with AMD cards as far as like driver related issues. And then I haven't tested one to know this for sure, but I know that the way that like the FreeSync works with AMD cards, that it can interfere with the way HDR, and like on certain monitors that have like the VESA HDR 400 versus 1000, like one might not work on an AMD card.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of variable stuff like that's not many people are going to have, you know, worry about that. But the fact that like the HDR is going to look different on it is reason enough that I personally wouldn't get an AMD card.
Yeah, that's weird. I've seen that on the hardware unbox or monitors unbox reviews, and I'm like, that's so weird. Why would that happen?
Yeah, it's just they've had driver issues with AMD forever. I remember back, probably 5-6 years ago, there was a lot of cards that they would release, and then like a year later release driver updates that give them a boost in performance, and people would praise them. And I was like, why are you praising them? This is a year now that it took them to fix something. Whereas Nvidia, within like a month or so, like their drivers are solid, and you get the performance from right at the beginning.
Yeah.
I do think that's a side effect of being an earlier adopter in almost any category. Most products that come out early, you're generally waiting for software updates to kind of bring in a lot of features. I noticed that when I purchased my audio AV receiver, it was like all these features on the box, but I had to wait over a year for firmware updates to start enabling features. But is that generally what happens with graphics cards now, or Nvidia just out of the gate, they just smoking everything?
It just works.
Okay, so they got this stuff together.
There's hardly there are some issues, but very minor issues. And for gaming, I think there's no problem at all. We have some issues when you look a little bit closer, editing and NVENC encoders and stuff like that. But this is really for 1% of the users, probably the issues. So Nvidia is just like LG; it works out of the box.
And can I ask you, Classy, what do you think? Would I blow up my power supply?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up to you.
Yeah, we're waiting on our video.
The question is, what kind of power supply is it, and how many 12-volt rails does it have?
It's a Seasonic Focus Gold.
Okay.
And it has four HDMI connectors.
No, so the 12-volt rails, there's either going to be one or two. So it doesn't matter how many PCI Express connectors there are. It's going to, inside the power supply, come down to one or two 12-volt rails. So if it's a single rail, you could probably get by, but it still would be stressing it too much and put a lot of stress on it. And at some point, it's not going to be happy. If it's a dual rail and you're trying to split it, and the split isn't right with the rest of the system power, then it's not going to work.
And what would happen? You think it would shut down, or would I catch on fire?
There's so many protections and stuff. You shouldn't have to worry about it catching on fire. It'll probably just shut down and not work. But depending on, if it's like a high peak spike in power and it trips the right thing, it can spark and take things out with it. So I don't know. It's at that point, like I have an 850 watt, and if I go with the 5090, I'm going to upgrade it just to be sure, because you want to stay around 70% of what the 12-volt power is, because that's where it's going to be its most efficient. Once you start going higher than that, it's just going to be hotter, and over time, it's not going to last as long. I've had a Seasonic power supply that the cables literally melted to the GPU.
Wow.
And that was with some 1063 gigs, because I was mining with them, but I only had 3 of them, and it was like a 650 watt, so the power should have been fine, but just the fact that it was running, and even with them underclocked, undervolted, low power, it just over time just melted the cables to them.
Man, it's like I'm on a tight budget for that 5090. So if I have to buy the power supply, that's another $180 or $200. But yeah, I'm gonna do it anyway. At the end, I will do it because.
But you spend already $2,000 or even more.
More.
You should go on the safe side and have a proper. And I'm always using. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I'm using always Be Quiet. I'm very happy with this brand. They are more expensive than other ones, but for all my builds so far in the last decade or whatever, I always use Be Quiet, and I never had a problem. So I'm always on the safe side. I don't know why.
I think the other concern is the coil whine. I think it could be worse depending on the power supply. And my GPU it is noisy. My 3080, I have the TUF, and it is noisy, especially when I'm getting 120 frames or plus. I hear like a very high frequency noise, and it is like screaming. That GPU is screaming, basically. It's not quiet at all.
Yeah.
Okay, but
so for Marcus, the power supplies, there's only a few like OEM companies. So like Be Quiet doesn't make it; they buy it from. So like if you're gonna be at Micro Center, they sell Super Flowers. That's one of the OEMs, and so you can buy. They're a little bit cheaper than most others, so you can get like 1,000-watt Super Flower for probably $20-$30 less than the equivalent of one of the bigger known name brands, and it's the same thing.
Yeah. So that's the Micro Center brand. The Super
It's
Flower.
not their brand. No, their brand is Inland, but they happen to sell Super Flower though. So like if you want to get the same kind of power supply that like Corsair or whatever would be, just with a different packaging, you can save some money and go with one of the actual OEMs.
But would that be like gold and so of course I would like to have
the
a
80 higher... the 80 plus efficiency is just when it's in its sweet spot. So say around you're using 70% of its power, how much extra power is it drawing from the wall to provide that amount of power? So that's where the tiers are. So it's not a necessarily like indicator of how powerful the power supply is. It's just how efficient it is at transferring the power from the wall to the computer.
Yeah, and which brand would you like? I'm thinking on the Asus TUF, because it has 2 HDMI 2.1 outputs, like the one I have. But do you think MSI? What is your preference?
My problem with the cards that have dual HDMI outs is you can't do HDR if you're trying to mirror them. So like you can't use it as like a splitter for testing TVs and mirror it out with HDR.
Yeah.
So really, it just the Asus TUF usually has a good cooler. That's really what it comes down to, is how good is the cooler. Don't worry so much about like factory overclock. You can look up like what the amount of extra power that you can set it to draw, because that's a somewhat of an indicator of how well it can overclock potentially. The cards that can draw more power usually can overclock better. Another thing you can do is wait for teardowns and see which ones have the better memory ICs on it, as far as how far you can overclock the memory.
Okay, well, in this case, I think the 5090, the memory is gonna be super fast. I think they look at the memory as to remove the bottleneck. And in this case, the 5090 is not gonna be bottleneck with that super fast memory.
It'll still gain performance though. Like if you can get, say, a 10% memory overclock, that it'll usually give about a 5 or 6% real world increase in FPS. It does kind of depend, but generally that's how it is. Whereas a core overclock is more important. If you get a 10% on the core, you're going to get about 9% real.
Yeah, I was thinking on the Founders Edition because I mean, very small. It looks very, very nice. And I watched their Bauer video, and he was saying that's probably the most expensive cooler of all the GPUs because of the fins are bent. And he was saying to manufacture that you need multiple machines or something like that. And I like the Founders, but I bet that's gonna be more than 85 Celsius. It has to be, right? What do you think about the temperature we might get with that?
Well, it's how much over ambient. So like if your room is 19 Celsius ambient versus someone else who's at say 30, I mean, you just add that to what the over ambient is and what it's going to do. So it's kind of hard to just look at it that way. And just real quick, I just looked up on Micro Center site, like they have the Superflower 1000 watt for $140. So if you do want to get a new power supply, you can go with that. Otherwise, if you were to go with Be Quiet Pure Power, it's $165, so $25 more.
Is that like a gold or something, or is that just or
yeah,
bronze?
It's 80 plus gold, and it's
Okay.
ATX 3.1.
Yeah.
So it has the
That's important,
special connector.
Should double check.
So we have a lot of comments actually, and this Heaps he is still using a 1080 Ti. Don't sell your card, you know, man. Just keep this card. This will be our all forever classic anyway. But coming from a 1080 Ti and maybe upgrading or updating to a 5090, that's a big step. Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah, and like if you're a gamer looking at a 5090, the only reason you should look at it is if you're 4K or higher.
Yeah,
that's the memory bandwidth on it. Like that's what it is for. That's the one thing that really irritates me with the 5080 is that it's the 256-bit bus still, and like if that would have been a memory increase over the 5070 Ti, like then I would have just been like, all right, I'll just go with the 5080, save $1,000. But I can see 4K still struggling on the 5080 as new games come out.
Yeah, and that's definitely the reason why. Yeah, frame. Yeah, that's definitely the reason why I want the 5090. I want to get more than 4K and try to see some games where you can disable TAA. Some games, if I use the Nvidia DLSS4 to get more pixels, they actually look very good. But right now, I cannot get the frames. I need to do that. But just in general, with Nvidia DLSS4, with DLSS at the same time, the games look a lot better, a lot cleaner. But of course, it's more demanding because you're getting more pixels. So that's why I want the 5090. I don't want it for ray tracing. Like I would never use ray tracing ever on any game. I would get more pixels and more frames. That's why I want the 5090.
Okay, I get you on this later on. Okay. Because you know if you play, so I'm looking forward to actually. So I'm not sure if I'm getting a 5090 day one. It really depends. I'm not in a urge or that I have to have it. I would like to have it. And what the first game I think what I like to play then is Alan Wake 2 because the ray tracing is just wow in this game. So John M is actually asking something. So if the game don't support DLSS and frame gen, then the 5000 series cards are useless, right? So yes, but it's very unlikely that a game doesn't support DLSS or frame gen. So DLSS is in most games available now. Frame gen is a different question, of course, but it's going to be, in all the new games.
I mean, it's still the 5090 at the worst. It's gonna be like 15% faster than the 4090 at the worst. So you still get a very powerful GPU for everything. But yeah.
So the reason I'm here today is because I'm kind of learning from you gentlemen. And sorry to jump in, Classy. So the topic is DLSS4 and multi-frame generation. So you guys have got to start telling me, is this a must-have or a nice-to-have? If I'm looking to buy a new PC, like, is this something I have to get if I'm building my first PC in years? Like, what can you guys tell me about it?
Yeah, for me, it's a must-have. DLSS4 is a must-have, or DLSS in general. Frame generation is a different story, but DLSS is a must-have.
Yeah, for me, it's hit or miss. So like in The Witcher 3, with turning on DLSS and frame gen, I've noticed like I can be standing next to a bush and the bush just starts flickering on and off. Like there's random artifacts that happen like that for me I don't like. Luckily, something like The Witcher 3 is old enough now that you can turn all that off and still get good performance out of it. With newer games, though, it's a per game basis of if I would want to have it on or not based on what I'm experiencing with it. Like Call of Duty Black Ops 6, if I turn on frame gen or DLSS, it seems like it crashes every 2 or 3 games that I play. If it's off, no problem, no crashes.
Okay.
Interesting.
So that's interesting. Why would it crash because of DLSS? So again, so DLSS and frame gen, it's a different. They're two different.
Yeah, there's the two parts.
Yeah.
There's the upscaling, and then
Yeah.
there's also the additional frame. More or less to make it easy, just call it frame interpolation. It's using what it thinks the next frame is going to look like. So it's very similar.
So I think the marketing from Nvidia is misleading, of course. The problem I see is they show you 20-something FPS, like less than 30. Then the second image is with DLSS, but they are probably using DLSS performance to go from like less than 30 to go to like 60, for example. And there's no way I am buying a 5090 to play with DLSS performance. That doesn't look great. And how do I know that? Because I have a 3080 that I can use DLSS performance. It doesn't look great. So why would I do that to turn on ray tracing? For me, it is irrelevant if it has the better lighting and shadows. If I see shimmering and the clarity of the image is terrible. So I would, of course, try to get as much pixels and as better of an image I can, and then let's see what's the FPS with those settings. And frame generation for me is for very high refresh displays, because there's no other way you can get 400 frames on any of these games. No way. Yeah. So that's why you want this multiple frame generation, but it's not to go from 30 to 120, or it's not to get bare minimum FPS. So if you have a 144 hertz, multiple frame generation might be almost completely irrelevant. I want to see how well it works with 3x only, because with 3x you have a frame rate of like 48 frames. So I might not be terrible, but it's like bare minimum. If it works okay for some games, it's gonna be like bare minimum. So yeah, you want your base frame rate to be as high as possible.
Yeah, of course. That's what we need. The base frame rate needs to be high.
Classy, I was curious about what you mentioned before about why are the games crashing. Why do you think that is? What would be causing that?
Usually it's an issue with the game that can be fixed in a patch later. Like Black Ops 6, who knows? I mean, it's Activision. All I know is like because I was getting right around 90 to 100 or so average. I was trying to get a little extra to get to 120. So I turned on DLSS and then just started getting crashes every 2-3 matches I would play. Turn it off, goes back to being fine. But for me, like, again, it's a per game basis of if I would say it's a positive or net benefit. The problem is there's 2 benefits from extra frames. One is lower latency, so better feel. And then there's 2 is how it looks on your display, if your display can even go as high as, however many FPS it's trying to generate. So for me, I'm not as bothered by the motion blur or, like Ariel, I know you are more focused on, as little motion blur as possible, make it as smooth looking as possible. I personally would rather better feel, lower latency. So with the frame gen, if it reaches a point where the latency is not getting better and the image quality is just getting smoother, then sure, that's a benefit. But if it becomes a point where you're going to be sacrificing latency just for a slightly smoother look, I wouldn't personally do that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point because latency is actually more important than frames.
Yeah, but I think it's very important. You most likely you play with mouse and keyboard for competitive gaming, right?
Not really. My
No,
hand arthritis.
Oh,
So you play with
controller is better. Yeah.
Because what I see is that with mouse and keyboard, the latency is a lot more important than the motion, because when you do this with the mouse very fast, you are not like enjoying the transition, and you're gonna feel more the responsiveness if you have some lag. But with the controller, when you pan slowly, it is like more at the same speed, so you definitely see more the clarity.
Mhm.
But you
Yeah,
know,
and-
everyone is different and what you want.
Yeah, and the same thing with like some people get caught up a lot on input lag of a TV or a monitor, but there is a large end-to-end latency here. So you have the input from your mouse or your controller, you have the game engine, you have a bunch of different variables before it even reaches the screen. So if you're looking at one display versus another, and there's like say a 3 millisecond difference, if that difference is less than, let's say, 10% of the overall end-to-end latency, you're never going to see that, and it doesn't matter who you are. So like I think it's the latest Street Fighter at best has 60 milliseconds or something of in-engine latency. So you add that up, the end-to-end latency, like you have to be adding or removing 10, 15, 20 milliseconds for there to be a perceivable difference. It just depends on the game engine, and other variables, but
that's a good point. Yeah,
that's right. I tested a benchmark that was about latency, and I was able to notice 10 milliseconds. Less than 10 milliseconds, I cannot tell the difference. Basically, the benchmark was asking you, is this the 10 millisecond latency or is this the zero latency? And at the end of many tries, it tells you if you actually pick it up right. I forgot the name of the benchmark.
Yeah, so a benchmark like that
10 milliseconds
probably has very little that it's doing. So maybe
Yes.
it has a very short engine
Yeah, it's
latency
running at
right there.
Yeah, it's running at 1,000 frames per second.
But
So
yeah,
it's
if you
like-
look at like The Witcher on console, if you go from 60 FPS to 30 FPS, that's the difference of 16 milliseconds. But in The Witcher 3, the game engine slows down to where you're going from like 60-ish or something, or 70, whatever, at the 60 FPS mode. And if you go to the 30, you're at like 120 to 130 milliseconds. The engine slows down so much just from the extra detail in the world or whatever, that the end-to-end latency is more than double, not just the display's difference. So it depends on the game. This is, again, it's always a per game, per whatever basis that it changes.
Yeah, one thing I am excited about is the Reflex 2, because I tried that with a demo that I shared. I think it's gonna be amazing, because it doesn't matter if you don't have the frame updated, it will warp the current frame, and it's gonna feel like it's gonna feel so much more responsive. So I cannot wait to see that Reflex 2 with frame generation. I think it's gonna be mind blowing. Let's see.
So Reflex 2 is actually really, really great, because I saw the demonstration actually, and I never had this on my radar actually, but I'm like to test it more in games. But what about multi-frame generation? So how does it actually work? So that there was this slide, and I don't have it here actually, or maybe I have it here, where they're actually showing, without DLSS, we have 27 frames per second. With DLSS4, we have suddenly 240 FPS, and the PC latency is actually still half compared to before without DLSS. So the improvement what we're getting with multi-frame generation, it looks to me that we're not adding any latency, we're just adding frames.
No, but here's the thing. The only improvement in latency was with the upscaling first, with the DLSS. Then the frame generation is adding latency.
Because we're using a lower frame.
Exactly. So they lower the resolution. The thing is that they don't tell you that. So they are showing you less than 30.
But that's how DLSS works in general.
Yeah,
you use DLSS and you use an internal lower resolution and output in 4K or whatever your monitor resolution is. So that's how it works. And that's why I like DLSS, because the outcome, just looking at DLSS, not frame generation, I think in most of the games, DLSS looks better than native because of the better anti-aliasing and stuff like that. So this is my experience. But now, of course, with the multi-frame generation, and so increasing from 70 FPS to 240 FPS with no latency added, this is crazy mind-blowing. So I don't know where this comes from. Where are the frames coming from without having some latency and so processing power? You know what I mean? This is unbelievable.
Do you mind if I jump in? So something you just said piqued my interest. So for certain games like that are very fast twitch competitive, like the reason I got out of PC gaming was I was a Quake 3 player. I used to play competitive back in the day. And then when Quake kind of died, I moved over to console. So I'm assuming you guys are familiar with Quake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So with those games that are super precise, I mean, assuming Call of Duty is not far off as well, super precise headshots, games like Counter-Strike, is this multi-frame generation, because it's kind of, and forgive my ignorance, creating kind of fake frames in between, would that affect high-end performance gameplay where people are like super competitive? Is this more for making games look pretty and feel smoother? But do you get what I mean? So when you're looking at precision headshots, fast twitch, ultra low latency, would that actually inhibit and cause issues for those type of high-end competitive players? Because from what I'm understanding is this is just to make games look a little bit prettier, a little bit smoother, and kind of create like a fake performance gap. Or am I off the rails all the way here?
No, you're right.
I think it depends on how many frames we're talking about. The problem I see is that what Nvidia is marketing is that now ray tracing is possible with high frame rate. That's the marketing. So they are showing you 30 FPS at 4K, then upscaling from 1080p, and then 4x frame generation. And you see like 240 frames. That's not great. And that's definitely not for competitive games, because you're doing 4x frame generation. So you're adding 3 more frames. So the base FPS is like 60. From 60 to 240, that's not great for competitive gaming, because competitive gamers don't play at 60 FPS. So
but they also need each frame to be exactly precise, right? They don't want
not necessarily.
Okay.
Let's say that you have a 600 hertz monitor and your base FPS is a lot higher. Then it's not a problem. Let's say your base FPS is 120 and you have a 480 hertz monitor. You do 4x, that's going to feel very good. You can play competitive like that, I think. No problem.
Okay. But what I'm trying to say is the introduction of fake frames that the game isn't actually producing going to affect a player's ability to kind of be precise in their games, if you know what I mean. I'm just trying to understand this technology, because at least for Quake players, the first thing they do is turn down all the graphics, make everything look really ugly and simple, and they just chase refresh rates.
Yeah, so it's not trying to make the game look better in the sense of what you're thinking. Marcus, if you want to put that back up for a second.
Oh, yeah.
So try to think of it not so much as FPS and resolution. Think of it as pixels per second, the combination. So in the left image, there's not enough information here, but let's just say it's trying to draw 4K and it's getting 27 frames per second. The second one is where it uses what people know for DLSS is the upscaler. So it'll render instead at 1080p and then upscale. So it'll create what it thinks those other pixels between 1080p and 4K should look like. Then with the newer DLSS, which is frame gen, it's now, again, think of it almost like interpolation, where it's going to take that information from that frame and it's going to buffer out the next frame, and it's going to create fake frames in between based on the information that it has. So if you have the setting, like Ariel was talking about earlier, set to performance, you're going to be at a lower resolution. So you're going to have less real pixels, and it's going to be extrapolating more data from that as it can. But this is where you run into artifacts, and it's going to make mistakes, and it's going to be on a per game basis of how good of a job it actually does. But if you were to set it to like a quality setting where maybe it's upscaling from 1440p instead, and it's not maybe generating as many frames, it'll make less mistakes.
Right. So that kind of leads me to what I was thinking. So this technology is less for performance gamers, like competitive gamers. I mean, it's more for gamers who want just a better frame rate, because as I said, competitive gamers, they want they don't want predictive.
So it's not going to look
range.
as good as native, and it's not, except for in motion it can. So
because there's inaccuracies, right? When you're creating, when the graphics card is trying to interpret fake frames, there could be inaccuracies. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, say there's a tree in the distance and it, thinks that based on the movement that the branch should be here, but it actually should be here. So it might cause some kind of breakup or whatever in the image once it's actually caught up. Something like that can happen.
Sure.
So I would look at it this way: 71 frames. If the option is 71 frames without frame generation or 246 frames, the 146 is going to be better, even for competitive gamers. But the problem is there's no way a competitive player is going to use ray tracing and get 71 frames. You're going to turn that off.
Yeah, they turn everything off. Yeah.
And now your base FPS is going to be like 142 to begin with, 120, So from there, what would you do? The question is, would you use frame generation to go to your maximum refresh rate if you have a 240 hertz? Yes, it's going to be better. So if you compare 120 FPS without frame generation or 240, having a 120 base frame rate, I think a 240 is going to be better.
Yeah, we're talking about base frame rate, but in this
the base frame rate
example, we're talking 27, which is low like crazy.
Yeah.
That's already not a good thing. So this is, but you're absolutely right. So people need to understand that DLSS is, in this case, they're really not telling you the whole story, because it would be much better that we actually maybe decreasing the resolution already with DLSS off to get a better latency and a much higher frame rate, and then maybe trying to use some frame generation or DLSS. But the problem is, if we're coming from a low frame rate and we're trying to add fake frames or whatever, the result will be always worse compared to having 120 FPS in the beginning. That's why my thing, when I made a video yesterday about 5090 performance, because we got a couple of new charts actually from Nvidia, and it looks like the raw performance is just up to 33%. That's not a lot, coming from a new generation, but that's probably the minimum, the bare minimum what Nvidia was going to do, because they haven't changed much on the architecture from the cards. You know what I mean? So
with the PC latency, it specifically is stating PC latency in this chart, and this is for whatever this game or whatever is. So let's say this is a different game, different engine, and these numbers are different. We do see that it actually increases on the fourth one. Yeah. So maybe in a different scenario, the PC latency goes from, let's say, 28, and then on the fourth one, it goes up to 42. So you're actually getting a pretty, noticeable bump in PC latency. But on the flip side, depending what that frame rate difference is, if your monitor is faster, your monitor display latency is going to be going down. So it could even out. It could be lower or higher. It's going to depend on, what monitor you have, what the latency is of that monitor, what the game engine is, how it all works. So this is a one case example, and it's highly unlikely to be an actual real world example.
Yeah, that's very important too, because, for example, OLEDs are very good at any refresh rate, but with LCD-based displays, sometimes at 60 or 80, the responsiveness is a lot worse than if you get the maximum hertz. But the thing is, PC is all about options. It's all about you being able to fine-tune the game to the way you want for what you're looking for. So you can always get more fidelity or get more frames, whatever. But with a 5090, you should be able to play all the games with a very high frame rate, unless it is CPU bound. And that's where frame generation is very important. Like if you have a game like Stalker, that's like, it's almost impossible to get more than 60 FPS consistently. Or Jedi Survivor, which is also very, very difficult. Then frame generation is like the only way you can get it smooth. experience because the CPU is limiting the FPS.
Yeah. I mean, the only way is we have to wait for Ariel until he gets the 5090. That's it.
Get me one too.
Yeah, this is my problem with pretty much every outlet that reviews video cards is they're always just measuring either frame rates or frame times. Obviously Gamers Nexus goes more in detail, but they're all using these like cookie cutter settings. They're using the same settings, the same resolution across all these cards. It's one of the things where at some point in the future, if I have more time and I get more back into PC stuff, I would do reviews where you're going to, let's say, review a 40 or a 5070 Ti. At what settings are optimal for, let's say 10 different games at different sets of resolutions to achieve different frame rate targets? Like, what's the real world experience that someone buying the card is going to expect to get? Like, can you turn, these 4 settings down to push you up the next tier in frame rate to where the 120 versus 144 makes a difference? Things like that.
Yeah,
it makes a lot of sense because sometimes they show you the 5090 or any GPU, they show you like 23 frames per second, because they are only
and no one's gonna play that.
Nobody's gonna use that. They only care about the differential, to show you what's the difference between the GPUs.
Yeah, it's like if you go back, 15, 20 years ago, Hard Forum used to do reviews like that. They did apples to oranges comparisons when they would compare video cards, and it's like, what are you actually real world going to be able to turn on with this card that you can't turn on with that one?
Yeah,
and that's the point. I mean, no one is buying I don't think people are buying a 5090 to play in 1080p, but I might be wrong.
I see a comment about Digital Foundry. Digital Foundry does something kind of similar, but they're still not like, if you want to reach, say, 165 FPS or around, let's say 140 to 165, that range on a card, what resolution and setting is going to get you to that frame rate target for your monitor? Or the other way around, if you have a 4K monitor, what settings are going to be optimal and then what frame rate can you expect at that resolution?
But it's not even that. So sometimes I found myself, so 4080 is not powerful enough to play everything in 4K with maxed out details. So sometimes I'm using 1440p to max out the details because it does look better to have better texture quality, better shadows than having a higher resolution sometimes. It really depends on the game as well, of course, how the settings are, how the game looks in general. So
the games are the most important thing. Sometimes a game with DLSS performance looks better than a different game with DLSS quality. Like I was playing Uncharted, The Legacy of Thieves, and that game is so blurry. Even with 4K DLSS quality, is so blurry. It looks terrible. So for that game, I have to push more pixels if I can. So you cannot say, DLSS performance for everyone or DLSS balance. That's fine because it depends on the game.
I need to ask, so why does the 5080 seem to be the most controversial card? I've just seen so many negative comments about that particular card.
I would say it's about $100 overpriced compared to the rest of the lineup. So the 5070 obviously is the lowest one. The 549, that's a good price for them to advertise. The 5070 Ti does enough to offer that $200 bump. The 5080 is kind of just there if you want something more than the 5070 Ti, but don't want to spend $2,000 on a 5090. Like the performance differential between the 5070 Ti and 5080 isn't that big.
Right. Because I just see so many negative comments about it. I'm just trying to understand.
Because it also is the smallest jump from the 4080 to the 5080. It's like 15%. Better, so that's very small.
So in general, raw performance is really so, because when you remember coming from a 30 series or whatever, and then we had the 40 series, there was the raw performance was in some cases I think twice. So really you got, instead of 30 FPS, you got 60 FPS suddenly. Now we're getting just a little bit more. I think Nvidia just focused on all this AI, DLSS stuff and whatsoever, and they had They probably just thought about, let's do it a little bit, or let's get a little bit more out of the GPUs what we're selling right now in terms of money. We don't want to put too much hardware in, or maybe they are on a level already where it's really hard to have these jumps. Maybe we're seeing this already, or maybe it's just marketing thing. I don't know.
I think Nvidia is so far ahead that they can just drip feed whatever they want, and then they can have their one, Halo card. They can charge whatever they want for. They're literally in a monopoly position.
We have a super chat from Ben Tech Gamer. Thank you very much. RTX 5090 is gaming and workstation. Yes, someone who likes to play at maximum settings while also streaming at 4K HDR, exporting a game at 4K 8K, and still have great experience. Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of content creators are switching to 5090, not necessarily because they're playing games or whatever, just because they have better encoders. They're introducing AV1 HQ or something like that with the 5090. The NVENC encoder, I think we have 3 on the cards instead of 2. So everything is going faster if you do video processing or video encoding and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if the 5080 was, say, even 320-bit bus, something to differentiate it from the 5070 Ti, I think people would be happier with the price. But as it is now, there's such a difference in the memory between the 5080 to 5090 that's why it's $1,000 difference, and it just kind of sucks. Like, I would have even gotten a 5080 if it was $1,200 if it had better memory situation.
Yeah, that's the most. I don't understand why Nvidia is still doing this. I mean, that's probably because they don't care much about the 5080.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, they're just because why they're not increasing to at least 24 gig, to have. But I don't get it. A 16 gigabyte for so here in Australia, $2,000 card is just not, But on the other hand, of course, I have to pay $4,000 or for a 5090 here in Australia. It's also bum, It's just.
And it leaves room for a 5080 Super next year.
Yeah. Okay. No, of course. Yes, that's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a box. There was a picture of a box with 24 gigabytes, a 5080 with 24. So they're probably planning on it.
Yeah, probably. So I mean, the early adopters anyway. You're always a little bit. Let's say like this. So with 5090 or whatever, I haven't seen any drastically price reduction here in Australia. They started at around $4,000, and we still have to pay $4,000. That's how it is. I don't know how the US works in this case, but Australia is very stable in price, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, also, unfortunately, I have a feeling that once the 5090s are sold out, I would give it maybe 3 months. If that continues to happen, then they're just going to start increasing MSRP on them, just like they. So like, it's not just the people who buy them and resell them that are scalpers. It's the actual retail places that can technically scalp too. And so that $2,000 is going to keep going up just to keep up with, like I said, professionals who need that RAM.
Yeah. I know.
That's why I'm going to sleep there if I have to. So definitely, I will set up Discord and you can send me that, Classy, because I want to make sure I can get that, man.
So you do a live stream when you sleep there, okay?
I will. I want to do a live stream like at Micro Center, the outside. People going crazy. Yeah.
Just one guy sleeping there.
Maybe it's gonna be me only, but I don't think so. There's a lot of people that want that.
I know.
I'm sure there's gonna be some people sleeping there.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember. It was great actually back then. Really, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3 launch, or not just that, even game launches. Before the internet. Because nowadays no one cares. But if there was a new game release, you actually waited hours before the shop opened to get a bloody copy.
Yeah, what I'm afraid is I'm gonna have to buy one that is just more than what I wanted. Like if I have to get the Asus Astral or something like that, it's like, I don't know, $2,400. That's going to hurt.
$2,400.
Yeah, something crazy. That's going to hurt. But I'm gonna have to do it if I want it, because then I cannot get it.
That's what I mentioned in my video, because I'm always just talking about $4,000. That's just for the Founders Edition here in Australia. We don't have any idea what the partner cards actually are. The third-party cards. We have no idea. They can be $5,000 if they want to. We have no idea yet.
Or you get forced
We
into
have-
buying one of the water
We have
cooled
no
ones.
sound anymore.
Oh
sorry, I
yeah,
was on
no,
mute.
that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, water cool, no, because I don't have my case is a $30 case. It's a Chinese $30 case
Mm.
that doesn't
Everything
have
is
any.
Chinese.
Let me ask you
space.
guys, what does the third-party variations offer over the Founders Edition? So what benefits do they bring?
In the past, it's mostly been better, cooler design that's quieter. Maybe a couple percent more better, overclocking,
Yeah.
or sometimes extra features like a BIOS switch, things like that. Now that the Founders cooler is such a good cooler, that's kind of like just go for that, unless you like the looks of a different one, or if you need water cooling. Like I don't think there's been any information yet on like which cards certain blocks will be compatible with or not.
No, I'm not a big fan of water cooling anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, my biggest concern with the 5090 Founders is that the liquid metal in the future it might be a problem, and that's a kind of a mess if you need to, because with the regular GPUs, I've done it with my previous one. I've opened it and repasted, and when the temperatures I see that were bad, I open and repasted. I don't know about liquid metal. I don't know if over time something can happen.
As long as it's held well, the liquid metal's fine. Like my so the computer that I had before, I had a 10th gen i9 that I removed the IHS from, put a copper IHS with liquid metal. I mean, that thing's still going just perfectly fine. Liquid metal lasts a long time, doesn't like the temperature doesn't change over time. So.
They do have a rubber material to contain the liquid metal. That's good. I watched the Gamers Nexus video, but they also said that they prefer the GPU to be in a regular expected position, flat. And I'm going to have the GPU like this because I have the case and the floor with the cover open. So I'm concerned with the liquid metal. If I have the GPU like this, it's gonna start dripping or something.
It won't drip, but it possibly could pool to the bottom or towards the bottom of the die, which might create a hot spot.
Yes.
But it depends on how tight the tolerances are.
Yeah.
So let's try to answer this question here from Gang08. How important is 16 gigabyte VRAM since the 50 series will need less? So he's talking about new DLSS4 is apparently using less VRAM, but this also counts then for the 40 series because we're getting DLSS4 on the 40 series as well. And are 12 gigabyte 4070 enough for 4K gaming? No. I would just say straight no. It's not even enough for... So with frame generation, stuff like that, yes, of course you get the frames, but some games, actually, they're coming close to 16 gig. To be honest, and you don't want to have, as soon you run out of memory, you have a stutter fest. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell exactly too, because when you're looking at the reported memory usage, it's actually showing the allocated amount of memory. So most games will actually allocate more than they really need. So in a situation with like a 5070 at 4K, if you're using DLSS, it's actually going to be lower resolution, being upscaled, we'll use less RAM. So that's different. If you're talking native 4K, then certain games possibly could have an issue.
There's always the way to decrease settings like texture quality and stuff like that, and yes, but again, I think a 5070 with 12 gigabyte of RAM is not made for 4K gaming.
Yeah, it's definitely not designed. And the 192-bit bus, it is not designed for 4K. That is a, get a lot of frames at 1080p or get moderate frames at 1440p card. But if you want a lot of frames at 1440, you're going up to the 5070 Ti. And then if you want to bridge the gap between 1440 and 4K, you go 5080. But if you just want a lot of frames at 4K, you go 5090.
Also, there is one thing that I am excited to try. With the 32 gigabytes, there are some games and some things you can do to kind of load part or as much as possible on the VRAM to reduce stuttering and get a smoother performance. It's some advanced stuff that I don't know how to do, but I'll figure it out. It's basically like load the game if you can on the VRAM, so you don't have to pull from the hard drive and to the memory RAM, and then from that to the GPU. So there are some cool stuff that you can do to get a next level experience. So yeah, I'm excited about trying that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we're waiting for 2 videos actually from Ariel. So first of all, live stream to get our 5090. We like to see some fighting, and he is in good shape, so I'm rooting for him. You know what I mean? So and then we like to see the live stream actually when he's turning on the 5090 with his 700-watt power supply.
Let's see. I think I'm gonna at the end I'm gonna buy the power supply, because the thing is, if it blows up or something bad happens, yes, I can replace it or return it or something, but then there's no GPU available. So it would be so sad if I break it.
Well, and it could possibly take your processor, or motherboard, or something else with it.
Yeah.
Yes, something could go wrong.
Do you remember the first AMD 8-core CPUs?
No.
Do you remember when those came out?
The Ryzen 1?
Oh, the ones that were melting down?
Yeah, so I bought one at release.
I remember.
From Newegg. Literally just put it in, turned it on with motherboard, and then just pop smoke, everything pouring out of the computer. Luckily, I was able to send it back to Newegg at the time. But yeah, like things randomly can happen, even if it's done right. Like it happens.
That would be crazy. Well, maybe the best thing, maybe Gamers Nexus would buy the GPU if it catches on fire, and then I'll become famous.
Yeah, okay, then that might
happen. Let me ask if at that point it's user error, and they'll probably just laugh at you.
Is there much of a focus on 8K gaming these days, or is that just still a pipe dream at this stage?
I think with the 5090, that might be possible.
Because I was listening to Classy talk about like the different categories. You're getting good frames at 1080, 1440p, moderate. Like this card's designed for 4K, but like, would this card perform well at an 8K resolution?
I mean, what do you want to play Counter-Strike? You'll be good for that. Like, it depends on what you're playing.
True. 1.6.
So like the problem that there's plenty of people playing at 8K. The problem is you're going to be playing at a lower refresh rate. And the majority of people who have 8K have 8K LCDs that don't actually resolve full 8K resolution in the first place, and they're lower contrast. So it's like 8K only makes sense if it's an OLED, and not many people are out there with an LG Z series.
Yeah.
So this super chat, thank you very much, Leonard. Guys, please test the new lossless scaling APP version on Steam. Amazing. Any GPU can have multi-frame channel right now. Good bless you guys. Thank you very much, Leonard. So first of all, before we answering this, I really try to get more into PC stuff, but this is still an Ariel thing. So are you going to test this, Ariel?
I did. That's the video that blew up.
That's the video. Okay, so we talk
like 60,000 views on that video.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, which went crazy.
And the thing is, I didn't know it was gonna be good at all, and that's why I like the way I do the video. Sometimes I have no bias. Like I'm testing it right there where you see it, and I didn't know before I started that I was going to tell you that was good or bad. I'm like, okay, I know what this is. I've seen it before. Let's see if there's any improvement. And then while I'm seeing it in real time, I'm like, okay, well, it's actually great. And I got excited about it while I was testing it there. So yeah, I think it's good.
Do we need a 5090 if we have this?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be much better quality. I mean, I can tell you, even the motion interpolation of my Samsung. Oh, well, you have your S95C. I think it's better in some ways. Like you have less weirdness, less like with some complex geometry. This lossless scaling gives you some artifacts that are very, very obvious, and I don't see that with the Game Motion Plus with the Samsung. The thing is, with lossless scaling, you can do it at any target. You can double, triple, and 4x, any up to 20x your frame rate. Of course, you get more artifacts if you do that. So you have some flexibility, and it looks good, but it's not going to be, of course, it's not going to be better than the Nvidia frame generation. Of course not. Yeah, because it doesn't have access to motion vectors or anything. It's using pixels. Yeah, so but it's good. Definitely, I recommend you try it.
Yeah. So I mean, we all agreed that we have to get a 5090. Even Adam is going to build a PC. We all joining the PC master race. We already have, but anyway. So what are
my
you
problem is
going?
if I decide to drive up to Micro Center to get a 5090, let's say I end up with like even a $2,150 card, whatever variant of it. I have a 7800 X3D. I'll be sitting there thinking, well, let me just go ahead and grab the 9800 X3D. I'll leave with a 1200 watt power supply. Next thing I
But you need
know, I'm over $3,000. Like,
you need a new motherboard as well and RAM.
Oh my god! Yeah, what scares me is the price. Like, while we have been on this stream, I'm looking up the price of the RTX 5090, and in Australia, it says it's starting at a low price of 4,039 Australian dollars.
Yeah, that's
so for me, walking in with nothing to build a PC, I think I'm going to be scratching $8,000, which is basically the price of an 83-inch G5. So it's like,
what is the 5070 Ti going for there?
1 moment.
That's the one that's 750 here.
Didn't you hear Jensen speaking? He said a $10,000 command center. That's what gamers want. So that's right. That's what you need, a $10,000 command center.
He's smart, huh?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's so much money. I think the biggest question is, are the games we have available, are the games worth that much?
No,
I don't think so.
No.
So basically, your guys' prices are double our price.
Yeah.
And so if you're doubling 750 versus 2,000, it's definitely a much better value there than it is even here. So I would say if you don't really need the 5090 for a particular reason, the 5070 Ti is still going to be a really good card for that price.
So, but just try to explain to me why are we having twice double the prices here? I don't understand this. That's a different topic anyway. But I don't get this really. Australia, what are you doing? Really? Yeah, that's here. Just 1,500 Australian dollars for 5070.
Yeah, that scares me.
So, and that's just the Founders Edition, okay? That's not the third-party cards or whatever. So you can expect maybe cards up to $2,000 with the RTX 5070, depending on whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, and if you can get a even a 4080 Super, 4070 Ti Super, or something like that, that a little bit cheaper, discounted now that these new cards are coming, like that'd be probably even a better value.
I can't see that they're going to be lower in price, the 40 series. Not here. Can't see it. But that's how it is. Oh, we have another super chat. Give me a second.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Leonard. Again, I have a 4080 and I tested a new lossless version a lot. Anniversary update January the 10th. Many games. Lossless is better than frame generation from Nvidia. Tested. Okay. I really need to test this. I don't know when, but thank you very much, Leonard.
I said Nvidia has to be better, but I've never tried it because my Nvidia GPU doesn't support the Nvidia feature.
Okay.
So it's also interesting and kind of overlooked. I have a Lenovo laptop that I picked up earlier this year. It was only $1,000, OLED 3K screen, and it has a 4060, and it will play games at better frame rates and resolution quality than the PS5 or Xbox Series X.
Okay. So how much was it?
For me, for here, it was $1,000.
$1,000 with a 4060.
Yeah, and an OLED screen.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, on another note, I've just started an OnlyFans. So if anyone wants to subscribe to my OnlyFans, just so I can afford the graphics card, yeah, I'm going to need a good $10,000 to get this. So OnlyFans will be live at the end of the stream if anyone wants to pay.
Yeah, no worries. I'm your first follower.
Thanks, Marcus. Pity subscribe.
Oh my god, that's funny. No, it's not funny. Now we talked about this. No, it's not. No, it's a lot of money. Come on, and I mentioned this in my video. You know, for my first car here in Australia, I paid $5,000, and now I'm talking about $4,000 or even more for a GPU. This is just stupid. Really, this is stupid. You know, paying so much money for. But on the other hand, why not?
I mean, back in 2006 through 15 or whatever, when I was doing PC hardware reviews and testing and stuff, I used to be able to get an i7 with why did my camera shut off? Hang on. Did it overheat? Camera
That's
might have
live.
overheated. Can you hear me still?
Yeah,
Yeah,
keep going, man.
Yeah,
We-
okay.
We got you.
Yeah. So back then, like it was like $300 to get the processor, motherboard, and RAM,
Yeah.
and then maybe another $400 for a video card. But yeah,
Would
the
be
last few
interesting to
years
do a-
it's
yeah.
skyrocketed.
It would be interesting to do a comparison, you know, let's say 10 years ago, new hardware releases. How much did you have to pay back then, 10 years ago, comparing with your average salary or whatever to now?
Mhm.
How much is the increase? Because I don't know if you ever remember this guy who actually did this in the US. I think it was with his basket from the Wool Wars or whatever. You know, he just what he was doing 4 years ago, and he
I
just
saw that.
put the same grocery. He just put the same items again, and I think it tripled or 4 times more within 4 years.
Yeah.
And this is just crazy, you know what I mean? They're just fooling us,
But Jensen
every time.
Jensen
Jensen
said
is
that
important.
the 4090 was the best investment that you could make.
You know, I hate this guy, you know, because he's going home and doing so many idiots out there.
So, Classy, are you going to get the 5090 straight off the bat?
I don't know yet. I'm trying to move, so that's a lot of money that could go towards moving.
Okay.
So I've spent
Understand.
the last few months looking at houses and stuff. So it's like, on one hand, I want to because I know the price is just going to go up, and I also know that 2,000 is a lot of money. But if you look at it as if you only went through this generation, it's 2 years that you would have it, and if you went through the following generation, then that's 4 years. So you'd still be able to sell it for a decent amount. And people with 40 who bought 4090s when they came out, like they could sell it for more than they paid for it now. So it just depends. I'm thinking I'm probably going to hold off just because I'm moving. But if I wasn't, then I would probably get it.
And I'm assuming, Marcus, you're going to get it. I know Ariel, you're already lining up already. So
Ariel is already
Yeah,
done.
the
not
manager
sure.
of Best Buy and Micro Center, they know me already. So
okay. And Marcus, so are you in, or what are you thinking?
I like to get it, but it's not that I'm trying to get one day one, you know, online. If I can't, then that's it, you know. It's not a urge, you know. I'm still coming from a 4080. We have DLSS4. I would just, the thing is why I'm considering this stuff is just for the YouTube channel, literally. The same what I did with the PlayStation 5 Pro. I'm not because I don't have the time to game, you know. If I have time, I don't need this. You get my point. But for the YouTube channel moving forward, yes, I would like to have it.
I honestly don't think the 5090 is gonna benefit my YouTube channel at all. Like, who cares if I'm playing with more frames or less? Yes, I'm going to, of course, I'm gonna go crazy when I get it, and I might cry. You know, it might be a moment, but that's it. After that video, who cares if I have more frames? Now, if I'm going to talk about how good a game looks, like review the quality of the game, of course I have more credibility because now people cannot tell me, yeah, but your 3080 is outdated. Now I can tell you, yeah, the game looks terrible even with the 5090 completely maxed out. It's a blurry mess. And now who can tell me anything about that? I have a 4K OLED, a 5090. I'm telling you, it looks bad. It looks bad, up to me at least. So, but aside from that, it's irrelevant for my channel, honestly. But
yeah, Marcus, like if kind of the same thing for you. If your 4080 you feel like it's holding back something about your channel, then it makes sense to look at a new one. But if it's really not, then wait a year and see what the 5080 Super Ti whatever. Maybe that'll be a better option, price wise for you or something.
Let me ask you guys, like if you can set aside your own opinions and bias and thoughts about this particular card, but as I said, I'm potentially coming in after many, many years of not owning a PC. Do you think the card is actually worth its value in what they're asking? Do you think it is a fair price?
No, I don't know. It really depends on, not for me. $4,000 is too much money.
I mean, is a 911 worth $250,000? I mean, kind of is, but kind of isn't. Depends on who you ask. It's with Halo products, they can price whatever. Like, if they priced it at $4,000, they would still sell out.
Yeah,
The difference with the 911 is a lot of those Porsches and stuff, if that's what you're referring
they're
to,
increasing in price.
they will go up in value. So
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah,
different
I know.
category. But do you? Well, I guess you're right. You said these cards will
The
go up in
4090
value.
has gone up in value.
Right.
So right now,
Look at
5090
a 1080 Ti went up in price at the end.
and at the end, yeah, it's
All right.
knowing the market, knowing when to sell.
Okay. And Ariel, what do you think? Is it worth it to you? Like, do you think it's overpriced?
I think it's a steal, honestly.
A steal
for 4K. What it offers, nothing else is going to come close. Like if you're getting a new 4K,
You're Jensen's best
TV
friend.
and you want that, then
remember, I've been trained by Jensen. I'm learning a new science. It's called CEO math. It's not accurate, but it is correct. So yeah, I think it's a great deal.
Oh, sorry, this was wrong.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jimmy Harrison. Thank you for the stream, guys. Great info. Thank you so much, Jimmy Harrison, for the super chat.
Yeah, if you're not worried about getting the best 4K performance right now and you're just building the whole system, I would say maybe put a little extra money like into a bigger SSD, something that's going to last you longer, something like that. Get the 5070 Ti, something of better value, and then wait either a year for the refreshed either supers or whatever they're going to call them, or even the 6 series after, and then make your jump up for a better card.
The reason I'm asking is because I have been looking online for secondhand PCs. Like we have, the Facebook marketplace and things like that. And I am noticing people starting to sell entire PC rigs. You just buy the case, and they are selling the previous generation 40 series graphics cards inside them. And I'm like, well, do I spend double the price to get the 5090 everything brand new, or do I buy something secondhand and potentially save 50% on the money? And that's why I'm trying to understand what
you're not going to get double the overall real world experience by paying double. So find
but that's
that
with
price
all the
point
products
that you're comfortable with, and that gets you what your main goal is to achieve, and then worry about upgrades later.
Yeah, it kind of gets to that point where you get the higher up you get a point of diminishing returns. You know what I mean? So as you squeeze every last few percent, you're paying miles and miles more. So that's why I'm kind of picking your brains around this price, because at least in Australia, $4,000 seems insanity. I remember a day when $4,000 would get you like an insane PC rig, and like that's Australian dollars, so like maybe 2,000 USD. Like back in the day when I was PC gaming, that was a whole PC. So it's just the game has changed.
The thing is, to look at the 5090 on paper, it is double the 5080 in some things. That of course and it's double the price too, but that doesn't mean double the performance. Of course, there's definitely diminishing returns, but in your case, you have an 83-inch display. It's OLED, perfect, amazing. So you would definitely see a huge difference from a console to that high-end gaming PC. It's gonna be huge for you.
Yeah,
so,
I have thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, the resolution jump is gonna be amazing.
Yeah, and every time I watch videos online of people, just gameplay of people playing PC games at high settings, I always play my Xbox or my PS5 and think, oh, this looks fantastic. Even with YouTube's compression, I'll watch gameplay in 4K on YouTube, and I'll make, man, PC smokes console, but it also is quadruple and some in the price.
Absolutely. That's always the same,
And
PC always wins, in terms of graphic and frame rate.
And I'm happy with the PC I have. The games that look good, I am happy with them. Like, they look good enough for me. But my problem is when a game comes out that I really want to play, like Black Myth Wukong, for example. I'm a Souls fan. That's the kind of games that I like. And I try it on my system, and it looks absolutely terrible. And then I start using mods to improve it. And I'm like, yeah, it now looks okay, but I cannot get the FPS that I need, basically. So that's why I'm getting the 5090. So I can play some of those games that I'm not happy with because of the game. Like, my PC is great. My 3080 is still a good GPU, and I would keep it. I would not upgrade at all if it wasn't because we have so many bad games, basically, is what I'm saying. I mean, good games, but look bad, is what I'm saying. So
lost
yeah.
you again.
Oh, yeah, my
That's-
camera is overheating.
yeah.
It's not in a good position.
And why
right
is,
now.
why is that, Classy? Some of the good cameras, they overheat, and then you get a phone that has a cheap, cheap no, it's not even close in quality, and then it doesn't overheat.
Ask Sony.
I have a
That's
No,
Sony
so-
here. I have a Panasonic.
Normally, I'm sitting it on a tripod, but my tripod would have taken me another 15 minutes to go get it. So I just sat it here on a stack of movies with a towel under it. So that I guess the towel's capturing the heat, making it overheat.
because I find that like absurd. Like some cameras are like $5,000, $6,000, and you can only record like 30 minutes or something like that. With
Yeah.
my phone, I can record over 1 hour at maximum quality, no overheating.
Yeah,
I have a
much,
question.
much different size of the processor in it. But yeah, going back to the price though and the value, Titan V came out for $3,000 8 years ago. So just think about that.
Yeah.
I have another question around displays, so I might go around the room and ask, because I'm assuming you guys are using PCs on TVs, right? Or that's why I was asking. So, Classy, what are you playing your PC games on? Are you using a TV or a PC monitor?
Yeah, C3, 42-inch C3. I will not buy a monitor. Every monitor that I check and I look at, either the calibration's bad, the settings are screwed up where you can't access, color gamut and gamma and whatnot on the same picture profile. You have to pick one or the other. I hate monitors. I won't until monitors are basically just like stripped out. TVs with the tuners stripped out. I'm not buying a monitor. It's not worth it.
Marcus?
Thank you. It's just
Classic,
OLED TVs. That's it.
And
I'm using an LCD screen here for streaming, but
you're using your G4 for PC gaming right now.
Yeah, of course. If I'm doing testing or whatever, or the S95C.
And same with you, Ariel?
I use the Samsung S90D.
Don't you find that bizarre? So we're basically getting the best PC hardware that money can buy, and then no one's using PC monitors. Why is that?
That's their crap.
It is a common misconception led by a lot of people in the industry that PC gaming should be done on a monitor because the higher refresh rate, which sure they have higher refresh rate, but I would not change the higher refresh rate for the other trade-offs that you have to make for it.
Are we talking 144 hertz or 165 hertz in the future? That's enough. Not for competitive gaming, but a competitive gamer doesn't buy an OLED TV. You know what I mean? So for proper enjoying your content, an OLED screen is a must-have anyway, in my opinion.
This might be a really dumb question, and I'm going to regret asking it in a minute if it is a dumb question. But if your TV, say, supports a refresh rate of 144 hertz, when you're using this multi-frame generation, is that actually raising the frame rate, or is it doing like a black frame insertion where it kind of uses trickery to make your eyes think there is a higher refresh rate?
No,
it doubles the frame rate.
Okay, so it is physically doubling the frame rate. Right. Okay.
Yeah. It's just using a different set of cores on it, or determining, okay, so this rendered frame A and rendered frame B look like this. And there's a difference of, the objects are here in this frame and the objects are a little bit shifted in this frame. So they're going to use that information to create what people are calling fake frames in between to bridge that gap, to move the objects step by step to where they are in the second frame. So that's how they're turning 1 or 2 frames into 4 or 6 or whatever.
I was thinking about what you were saying the other day, Ariel, about the CRT simulation. So that actually is like a technology where it's tricking your eyes into thinking there's more frames when it's not raising the refresh rate.
No, it's not to trick you in, like it is more frames. It is reducing the frame visibility time. That reduces the persistence, and it improves the motion because of that. Classy, I wanted to ask you, what is I don't understand what is the metameric problems of the displays. I find once I try QD OLED, and I found that there was always something that I didn't like about my LG C1, and I did a lot of rants at the beginning, coming from a plasma, and I know the C1 was superior in many ways, but there was something off about it, and I couldn't put my finger on it. Was it that maybe? What is the metameric issues exactly? I don't understand. Maybe it's that what I was complaining about.
I don't know exactly what you were complaining about, but you have the 48-inch, right?
Yes.
Okay, so as far as brightness goes, just keep in mind that the 48 it doesn't sound like it should be considerably less than the others, but the ABL is a lot more restricted on that size, at least what the C1 was. But as far as the metameric differences, like each display technology is going to look at the same. Like if you calibrate them to D65, they can be, some of them can look tinted. So QD OLED at D65 is extremely close to basically matched, like extremely close to the reference monitor at D65. Like it's not a concern. And then add in that QD OLED doesn't have really any color tint uniformity issues across the panel. So that's one of the major benefits, at least that I like with QD OLED. With the LGs, you can visually match them, but because of the pink tint and cyan tint, depending on how you're looking at the screen or where your head is, like you can only match like certain areas of the screen. You can get it close enough. It still looks good, but it's a problem that hopefully they can fix. And based on what I've seen with like the new 4-stack, it doesn't look like that's going to be fully resolved. It might change, it might be a little better, especially since the SPD is a little better shaped. But it the removal of MLA also has me concerned because of that tinting. MLA helped on the G series make it where there still was pink and cyan splotches around the screen, but it was less visible, less noticeable than it was without the MLA. And so if that continues to be a thing, then if it does go that way, then I would personally rather a G4 over a G5 because of that alone.
You're the first person I've heard say that. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And because when I try this QD OLED, it remembers me I have two plasmas too, and the plasma looks so good to me regardless of this plasma I have here is very inaccurate, extremely, like it's all over the place. It looks very particular, but it still looks good. Like it doesn't matter what I do, it looks good to my eyes. And the C1 was always, there was something that I didn't like about the colors and the way the screen looks. And when I got the QD OLED, I was like, wow, this is so much more. It's like the C1 is like looking at a beautiful girl that has a lot of makeup. So you don't really know if she's beautiful. You're looking at her, yeah, she is, but a lot of makeup. So I don't see the real deal. And the QD OLED is like a beautiful girl just waking up, like no makeup. It's like,
I mean, so I would say there is a generational leap between, say, a 48-inch C1 and a G4. But there's also still a difference between at least the panel. Like QD OLED panel technology is substantially better than what WRGB can do. The problem is the implementation from TV to TV. Like we're not looking at just the panels, we're looking at the TV as a whole. How is it tuned? How is the tone mapping? How is the ABL? So like I know you focus a lot on full screen brightness measurements, but the S95D is brighter full screen than the G4. But in high APL scenes, the G4 is still brighter than the S95D. Even if you go outside of accuracy, you go into like, say, vivid mode or the cinema home with dynamic tone mapping on versus movie with active tone mapping on Samsung. The way that the S95D is designed and tuned from Samsung, it's not allowed to use its full potential to be brighter. But smaller highlights on the S95D are brighter than the G4. So there's a lot of little individual pieces of the pie that make up the image that you're going to see. And there's rarely one straight answer for everything, and it goes content to content. That's the other thing is like 99.99% of content can't reach the abilities of what the displays are now. So it's kind of like, for me, it's gotten kind of boring because if you buy either a premium tier OLED or a flagship OLED over the last couple of years, it's mostly the same. Like for most people, most of the time, even side by side, the differences are so small. But again, the panel technology itself, QD OLED technically in theory has a much higher ceiling.
Yeah. And
the
especially
other
for me, for screen uniformity, the QD OLED is just a complete different level, actually. I don't know if you watched one of my videos or live stream where I complained about the G4 when I turned it on. I mean, I know that you have to break in OLED and, of course, TVs, but it was terrible out of the box. It was so terrible, the screen uniformity, that even with test footage or whatsoever, I was able to see the uniformity, the stripes. You know what I mean? It was I never seen this before. So now it's on a level where I would say it's no problem at all. But still, my G2 has a better uniformity compared to my G4, and not even talking about the QD OLED what I have. It's a different level.
Yeah, I mean, and of course with white subpixel, the color in general is just going to be, again, higher ceiling on QD OLED, but the question is what content are you using? Like if you, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, like that's a game that's probably going to show like a good difference if you have them side by side, because it's very bright, very saturated color. But if you just turn on a random show on Netflix or whatever,
you won't see a difference.
Yeah,
no way. So Night of Cyber, thank you very much for the super chat. Are you hearing that QD OLED is being phased out? Not sure. I don't know. Any insight? I don't know. I mean, we thought that WRGB OLED is also phasing out, but now they're changing something, 4-stack layer and stuff like that. So no, I don't think it's phasing out. I mean,
no. So there's a lot of doom and gloom because they've lost a lot of money over the panels. But I mean, it's like any new technology, any new thing is going to be a big investment. It's going to take them a while to get that investment back. The thing is, are they still able to be price competitive with alternative options? Because there's a lot of different technologies now in the making, and there's quite a few TV companies, but not really a lot. Really, the monitor market is where QD OLED's doing the best. Like they're able to make most of their sales. A lot of different companies making QD OLED monitors, but with the TV market, they have to be able to sell the panels to somebody.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, Classy, do you think you can make... I have an S90C and the S90D. I like how the S90D looks better when it comes to the colors and how natural it looks. Can you make the S90C look the same? I'm not talking about making it accurate. I'm talking about making it look the same as the S90D with instruments, or would you have to do it perceptually to make it look the same? Or can you measure what this is and then go to the S90C and then replicate?
Camera. So the S90, the Ds, so the S90 95D, they made their color much more accurate out of the box in the filmmaker and movie mode, and it uses the BT 2020 by default. To do that on the C series, you can get it really close. Like for most people, it would look about the same. It's not going to be exactly the same. The controls are just very coarse. You can go in the service menu and have a little bit finer adjustment for color, but still, it's not going to be identical, but it's going to be close. Like it's not a panel differentiation that really. It's more so just the way that they did the factory color, and then versus the controls that you have.
So it's not the white balance, it's the BT 2020 calibration.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can set the white exactly the same on both.
Okay, because I tried. I was like 3 weeks trying like everything I could, and there was no way I could make the S90C look the same. I mean, I called my family and I asked them, "Hey, do you see any difference?" And they were like, "No, they look the same." But I knew, they're not the same.
Yeah, it also depends on what exactly you're looking at. Like there's very dark color, near black performance is different between them. It really depends what you're looking at and how close you want it to be.
That's one thing. So the 90C is crushing blacks. Is there any way to fix that?
Yeah.
How?
Calibration.
No, but I mean, which
the service
setting?
menu. You can either.
Setting?
in the service menu, you have the EOTF manipulation. You can adjust the shadow detail. So, but it shouldn't. You should be able to get like basically perfectly flat EOTF out of the Cs.
But which setting on the service menu? I know the EOTF tracking setting, but that doesn't raise the visibility.
It'll need to be measured on your panel to see exactly what your panel needs.
No, I'm just saying, like, which setting would raise the visibility near black? Forget about accuracy.
The was it HM peak, whatever that you use to adjust the EOTF?
HM pad peak W plus.
Yeah, but the thing is, you need to be able to measure it to know if it's actually right or not. You can't say that it's crushing shadow detail unless you have something to tell you what is actually correct.
Well, I'm seeing it side by side with a 90D, which is a lot more visible near black.
And that could be lifted. You don't know which one's right. You got to be able to measure both.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that setting is not giving me more visibility near black.
It raises the EOTF mostly in the mid range. You're going to see that's the problem. Yeah. So like again, you need to measure it. Like you shouldn't really have to go that far with the C to get it to measure flat. Like the C is usually really good out of the box. You make maybe a little bit of adjustment to HM peak to level out, like say around 50% stimulus or so, maybe, but that's about it. Like usually it's good out of the box. Like I just did a S90C that's unlocked to 95C today, and it was pretty much flat the whole way.
So, complete different topic, Classy. Are we going to see you at the CES 2026?
No, I don't go to CES. There's no reason.
Oh, okay. Then I'm not going.
I mean, I wouldn't say there's no reason, but like the stuff that they show you there, they set everything up. It's going to be, custom demos in vivid mode. It's irrelevant, really. Like none of what they're going to show is what I'm interested. I don't care if the TVs says that it can do 4,000 or 8,000 or 10,000 or whatever nits. It doesn't matter. I want to know how's the performance near black. That's more important. I want to know, like, again, there's so many pieces of the pie of what the brightness you're going to see is. Like all these LCDs that are claiming super high brightness numbers. I mean, 10,000 nits is not more than twice as bright as 4,000 nits. 2, local dimming, anything with local dimming is constantly restricting that brightness anyway. So to not have either washout or blooming or other side effects from LCDs. So, like I said, at this point, anything premium to flagship tier in the last couple of years, they're all pretty much there, like for the content that we have. Yeah. The main area for improvement is what they're doing near black.
Okay. Classy, let me ask you. So, because I've watched a lot of your videos, you're very precise. I know you do your calibrations and all that type of stuff. Let me ask you, what is in terms of the TV technology, what is the latest thing that's excited you the most? What is something that you've seen recently that you've like, wow, this is good stuff. This is a game changer. Is there anything in particular you could talk about?
Like I said, there's really nothing TV wise that's exciting to me. I want to just see, did they make improvements near black? Did they, add more, like, is Samsung going to add more settings for tone mapping options that can, help them in different areas? Did Samsung fix the color in game mode? Because they fixed it in Filmmaker and Movie last year, but they didn't do it in game mode. Things like that. That's what I'm more interested in. What is the software improvements and tuning improvements that they're doing? But for me, it's like even like going from 83 to 100 or 110 inch or whatever, it's a bigger TV for sure. But the general experience is kind of the same. So there's really nowhere else for me to go at this point except projector,
right?
Where I can go 4 times the size, and it's a completely different experience.
Yeah, because I feel like since the arrival of QD OLED, that was the last revolutionary thing that I have seen. Now it's all just evolutionary, incremental updates. Like I can't help but feel that CES was a little bit of a spoon-fed sample this year. I guess it's like every year. It's always like, oh, here's an extra 5% over last year, and now pay an extra 50% over last year's model. So that's why I was asking, like, is there anything that aside from QD OLED, there's nothing really that's like wow, because I see all these technologies being discussed, like mini LED and micro LED and all these other new technologies. FOMO was discussing ultraviolet, and I feel like there's all these new technologies in the background. I'm just wondering when they will actually hit the consumers. So it's just interesting. But yeah, so at least from your opinion, there's nothing major that you've seen that's really a big deal.
The ceiling on what we have is already so high compared to the content that we're given. It reminds me of if you go back to like the early 2010s or whatever, when Intel was stagnant, releasing the same quad core year after year with 5% improvement because games were only using 2 cores. So we were waiting for the software to catch up to the hardware. Like at this point, like movies and TV and stuff, they're still going to be considering all the people who just go to Target and buy a $400 TV from there. And then that's the general TV that they're keeping in mind when they grade. Sure, there's going to be outliers and certain shows, whatever, will push the envelope, but it's very rare. And most people don't even understand that HDR is code values. So, if you increase the brightness from 1,000 nits to 4,000 nits, the image doesn't change, just the peak highlight has the ability to go higher. Whereas with SDR, if you go above what it's graded to at 100 nits, you're raising everything, so the whole image can get brighter. But with HDR, the only way to increase the overall image of what you're seeing is to change the UTF tracking, or if you run into ABL in very rare situations.
Yeah, we have this question. This is a good one, actually.
Let me answer this question. I learned this from Classy, actually. What is the math equation for determining how much brighter 2 different nits are? So 10,000 nits isn't 2x 5,000. So we perceive brightness in a logarithmic way. So the logarithmic function, if you study that in math, what that means is the jump from 100 nits to 1,000 nits is going to appear the same as the jump from 1,000 nits to 10,000 nits. So the way we perceive the difference. But of course, 2x 5,000 is 10,000. It's just that we don't perceive that jump to be linearly better. So it is not a linear relationship in the way we perceive the brightness. It's a logarithmic relationship.
That's why people are always very we are testing a lot of TVs, I have from the CX to G2 to G4, and between CX and the G4 there's a obvious brightness difference between G2 and G4. To be very honest, you need to watch the right content, you need to look at the right time, at the right, it's not as a jump ahead, between 1,000 and 1,500 nits. It's very close, actually.
I wanted to ask you, Classy, about the new RGB mini LED TV. Is that going to look the same for gaming, do you think? Or it's going to be like different because the processing needs to be turned off?
There's still LCDs. So there's still going to be pixel response time is going to be longer. Still going to be the same DSE issues, vignetting issues, the same kind of LCD inherent issues to those. So if that's what you're referring to as far as the gaming having slow response time, ghosting.
No, I mean the local dimming, like the contrast.
That's going to completely depend per TV and how they tune it. It's not the change in technology isn't going to just be like the same for all of them. They're going to tune each one differently.
No, because I was thinking maybe to control all the RGB backlight and the dimming, maybe there's processing. So then you go on game mode.
They're going to need more processing because instead of 1 LED for a spot, there's now 3. So the dimming zone counts are probably going to go down because otherwise they would have to multiply everything by 3 and have the processing to do it. It's going to take a lot more processing. But here, I was looking something up to share.
So you think there is a possibility that could actually be good for gaming, that technology, if they do it right?
It'll be better color, but I'm not one who really cares for gaming on LCD because of
The ghosting.
The blur, the
Smearing.
ghosting, the inverse ghosting, all the variety of different issues, and then add in that usually the local dimming doesn't work as well in game mode as it would outside of game mode.
What I was dreaming with that technology is that they implement some flickering, and then that would be hiding the ghosting, because they can, with LCD based displays, they can hide the ghosting and the issues with motion. They can hide that on the dark cycles, so when the pixels turn off, so you don't see the issues basically. So because it's so bright that those displays are like 10,000 nits, right? I don't
In
know,
a
full
measurement.
screen. Yeah,
In a
and
measurement,
small.
that's the problem. In real content, like the Hisense UX last year that could peak at like 18,000 nits, it's not doing that in real content.
What, 18,000?
Yeah.
That leads me to a question I actually had. Sorry, Era. So the limit of HDR is 10,000 nits. Is that right? Or
Yeah. Marcus, can you put up what I'm sharing?
Yeah.
because my question was, with all these TVs coming out that are promoting nit numbers above 10,000, does that mean we need to then bring in HDR2, like a expanded version of the HDR?
So,
like, I'm just trying to understand, or is that what you're getting at here?
yeah. So on the left here is the code value. So how you have footroom and headroom. So with 8-bit, 0 through 16, and then 235 to 255 isn't used. This is for 10-bit HDR. So you start at 64, which is 0 black. So HDR, like I said, is code values. So if you need something to be code value, say 280, that's 5 nits or just under 5 nits. If we go down here to 100 nits.
And this is what I'm trying to get my people to understand. The dynamic range what we have in HDR is so much more compared to SDR.
Yeah, so code value 509, 510, that's about 100 nits right there. We're already halfway through the code values. So when a display is able to go brighter, like you're gaining more code values, which is important, but it's not a huge difference. So at 1,000 nits, that's code value 722, 723 versus say 2,000 that we're at now. That's barely a 10% increase. So
Okay.
it's not nearly as brighter as it sounds.
It's not linear.
Yeah,
not at all. So basically, just think of it as like 0 through like say probably 200 to maybe 300. Like that's kind of where most general content's going to be, and then you have highlights brighter than that, and even that's really high. Let me show this one too.
but this is what makes the contrast is probably the wrong word, but this is what makes the details in HDR, because you can have so many
contrast is the right word.
steps. Yeah, you can have so many fine steps. You know what I mean? And I still don't understand how people and people that they're owing S95C or whatever and trying to tell me SDR is better because it's brighter. Yes, it is brighter to your eyes because everything is just bright, but it's not better.
That's why if you're in a really bright room watching an SDR, you're going to be more visible. Here, can you share this one as well? So this is a bunch of movies that were scanned about how bright they were and what the average like luminance is. And
do you mind
zooming straight
in?
to the result? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so they did 57 movies, and they're measuring ADL, which is average display luminance. And there's a summary down here that makes it very easy to understand. Conclusion. Here we go. 90% of the movies have an average brightness below 20%. 80% are below 13%. Half of them are below 5%.
So
movies are graded so much darker than what people think.
So of what? So 20% of what?
So let me ask you, Classy, that was actually something shocking to me. I never watch any movies on HDR. I was just gaming. And then, new TV for the family, I have Netflix. And I was shocked how, unimpressive and dark was the Netflix content. Do you think that if I get the original Blu-ray, like the highest quality version of the movie, would the HDR be the same as what they have in Netflix?
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, the HDR experience is going to be about the same.
Okay.
Maybe there might be a couple cases here or there where something changes, or like if, let's say, a movie's out on 4K disc and it's not available in Dolby Vision, but Netflix has converted all of their HDR content to Dolby Vision, that can cause a slight change. But for the most part, like, you're not going to see massive like brightness differences or whatever from one medium to the next.
Okay.
But yeah, Marcus, so that's 80 is the average display luminance. So
So
what
again?
it's saying is that when they're grading the movies, on average, half of them are below 5% ADL.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Would you mind sharing that link in the chat if you have a moment?
Sure.
Please.
And then also I have one more to share that goes along with this. So this is hang on.
And let me ask you: do you think that's the best, or do you agree with that trend, or you think they are not taking an advantage of HDR?
It is completely up to the creator, the director, the colorist, whatever, to make those decisions. I am not going to tell someone how to do their art. So that's the point of getting a display calibrated is to see what they created. I'm not going to go buy a painting, bring it home, and start slapping more paint on it to change it how I want it.
I understand. Yeah.
So
it's a good analogy.
This is the Dolby Vision brightness data chart that's been worked on. And so you have your plot max FAL and average FAL over here. This is based on metadata. Metadata is not always correct, but in general, you can see that it's saying 3%, 5%, 5, 3, 4, 5, 5, 2, 3, 20. Like, these are the average FAL in the metadata for all these movies.
And can I ask you, the Samsung TVs, do they change the target, the tone mapping, depending on the HDR metadata?
Yeah.
When using the internal app on Netflix, for example, if it's 1000 nits, the TV is going to be like, ideal. Let's say the S90C, S90D class, that should be ideal tone mapping. If it's like 2000 or 4000, it would actually change the tone mapping to those.
Yeah, you can see you can even measure the curve change when you change the metadata being sent to the display.
Okay, so what are the targets? Do you have like a limit, like a set number of targets, or is it like any target? Like if it's 800, it would change to 800.
I'm not exactly sure how all the TV companies do it. I know, like with LG, it can interpolate. So like there's a 1000, 4000, 10,000, and then it can interpolate. So if you send it 2000, it can take the 1000, 4000 and interpolate that data.
So Classy, with dynamic HDR, so that's the way I understand it is movies can be graded on a scene by scene or frame by frame basis. Is that correct?
I mean, they can literally take a frame and however much time they want to put into grading, picking a particular object or, large section, whatever. It's up to them on how much effort they put into it.
Right. So are there any good examples of movies that have that kind of real granular HDR detail where they've graded the movie so well in different scenes and different frames? Are there any examples you could suggest I could go and buy the disc and watch it and get?
I can tell you some stuff that can showcase different aspects of what a display can do, where, like certain scenes that go beyond P3 color, certain scenes that go over a certain nit level or have a high APL level, things like that. But again, I can't say objectively if one is better than the other. It's different art.
Right. But would you have any movies or Blu-rays you could recommend where they've actually graded it like really well and you can say this is a great example?
Yeah, I can recommend stuff that is graded to a high HDR level, if that's what you mean. Anything
off the top of your head? Just I'll go and watch it.
Yeah, like the Crimes of Grindelwald, one of the Fantastic Beasts movies, or actually all those movies. There's the scene at the end with a fire dragon, lots of flames and stuff. There's parts of that scene that nearly the entire image is supposed to be over 3000 nits.
Okay.
So that's a real
I'll check that out.
Stress test.
Okay, I'll check that out. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, Classy, that first picture you showed, was that an ICC profile? that you open the notepad with all the code values?
No, that was just a pad showing what the code value correlates to as far as net value.
Oh, okay. Because there is a generator for Windows 11 where you can change with an ICC profile. You can change the Windows 11 calibration from sRGB to Gamma 2.2 and all that, like a transformation, and it looks like that. So I thought that's what you were showing, but I cannot see well because I'm on my phone. I cannot see the numbers.
Okay, this is really interesting. I mean, we know that some HDR movies or HDR series or even games are created or mastered absolutely terribly. We know about that. But I think HDR has a long way to go. You know what I mean? I don't, it's just, I don't know why is this the case. So is HDR, so can we compare HDR mastering or development in games with movies, or is it completely different actually? You know, it's because it depends, of course. So because I mean, a movie you shoot with a camera. Is there so if you have already a great HDR camera, then
you don't shoot in HDR. You shoot in a log format.
Log file. Yeah. Okay.
And then you grade from there. So with gaming, it's going to be a similar thing where the grading is done after it's been designed or whatever while it's being designed. As far as like standards go with gaming, like that's one thing I would like to do is find a way to talk to some people at actual game studios and see, are they using like Hollywood standards or are they using something else? Like, why is there such a big variance in how different studios are doing games?
Yeah, some games look like trash. Absolute trash.
Just the other day, so yesterday, my wife watched actually Squid Game. You know, the fish game on Netflix, and I noticed actually, so because it's 16:9, if your black bars, but it's actually there's raised blacks. That's raised blacks. If there's a scene which is supposed to be completely dark, you have raised blacks. So this is really bad grading, to be very honest. So I don't understand how this can happen, to be very honest.
Certain content is graded with so 0.000, 1 or 5 or whatever black. Some is 0.005. Like it's up to the how they want to do it.
Yeah, anyway, this is just there should be one because I mean we have the standard. HDR is a standard, so why are they not using it in the proper way? Because is it also because maybe of the difference between OLED panels and LCD panels, to make sure that with some like dynamic backlight,
so found that if someone's making content that's going to be like a Netflix original, there are set guidelines that they have to follow, not just with the grading, but like down to the camera that they use. It has to be a Netflix approved camera that has time code and different features and stuff that is requirement. So if someone were to buy like a cinema camera X and then go and shoot something and try to sell it to Netflix, if it's not one of their approved cameras, they're not going to approve it.
Okay,
interesting.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Classy, were you thinking about have you seen this Cyberpunk mod that changes the color grading so it looks more like realistic?
No.
So I watched a video. It's called like from ACES. I think is how you say that. ACES.
ACES.
So it is like changing the colors. So it is not as like colorful. It's not as gamey. So it's like a transformation. So it looks less colorful and it looks more realistic because of that. It's like a kind of transformation that they are doing with these mods to make the games look more like a recording, like a video. And it works because it actually looks more lifelike instead of a game. So it's like these studios are using a way that doesn't look realistic with the color grading.
Yeah, that again, if it's a mod, it's not what they originally intended. So it's just whatever that person's preference is. But yeah, when you were saying ASUS, I said ASUS. I thought you were talking about for a second the company.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that the company that makes monitors and video cards, motherboards and stuff. I've actually heard it from the company said Asus or Asus over the years, but I guess it should be Asus. But I don't think anyone cares. Everyone says it both ways.
Anyway, so we coming close to the 2-hour mark. That means so we're not going to see Classy in the CES 2026. That's bad news. But maybe Classy can visit Ariel at some point and calibrate his TV.
I would like to one day. I would like to get some equipment, but you know what really holds me back to learning this stuff is the software, man. It's just so expensive. Like, I'm okay if one day I spend $1,000 on equipment, but I don't feel like buying the software. I think it's too expensive. If I'm not going to be a professional, I'm not going to
some very
make
cheap
money.
or free softwares out there, and also there's something else being worked on that I'm aware of that will be Samsung specific. So.
Okay. I mean, yeah. Okay. So any last comments from anyone from us? I mean, it was a great stream. We learned actually a lot. I mean, this is great to have you, Classy. Yeah. You're more than welcome to join more often if you can make it.
I just happen to be getting back from a job, and you were about to start, so that's why I messaged you. So you were trying to get me on.
Perfect. No, that's fine. Absolutely fine.
Schedule's just been too much. I haven't quite decided what exactly I'm going to be doing YouTube wise, but at some point I'll start doing videos again when I have time, and just trying to figure out what makes sense to do.
I know the problem is to earn real money to pay real bills. That's the problem. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we have no more comments. I think everything is fine. So if you're happy, then we say goodbye. Huh?
Well, again, thank you very much, Classy. You know, we've been looking forward to have you for a while. Yeah. Maybe we can one day have you and then talk about TVs more specifically. So it'll be great.
Okay, we have one more. Let's try this one. So to answer this last question, because he asked me, do you think LG G5 will use DSC because HDMI not enough for 4K 165? It will use DSC, yes, probably. Absolutely, but it's not a big deal. I don't know why people always you can't see a difference. No way.
The somewhat annoyance thing is, like, if you're alt tabbing out of a game, it's just a longer wait to get to your desktop.
Yes, like, but in pure image quality, picture quality, there's no difference. You can't see anything. So yeah, but I have to say the LG TV is anyway very quick when you're switching stuff or whatever in terms of HDMI. Okay, so that's it, folks. Huh? Thank you very much.
Yeah, excellent.
We see you next time. So Wednesday with Adam, and whenever you're happy to join, Classy, you're more than welcome. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for your time, Classy. We appreciate it, man. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
See you guys. Bye bye.